I thought I was stopped for speeding. In fact, it was simply because I appeared to be overly tense. The police officer didn't ask for my documents. He said I was too nice to break the rules. A few days later, he left me his number. I wasn't looking for love, especially with him, but it was this encounter that made me step out of the shadows for the first time. I thought I was being pulled over for speeding. Turns out I was being pulled over because I looked like I was about to break. It was nearly midnight, and the streets of Westbrook were the kind that made silence feel like a dare. Every stop sign felt louder than it should have, and every empty sidewalk looked like it might hide something I wasn't ready to face. I hadn't had that much wine at dinner, just enough to loosen my thoughts and tighten my grip on the wheel. I didn't see the police cruiser until the lights hit me. Blue, red, panic. My heart jumped before I even had time to ask myself, what the hell did I do? I wasn't drunk. I wasn't speeding. My tags were up to date, but I still pulled over like a guilty man, like I'd done something I couldn't remember. The cruiser idled behind me for a beat too long. I rolled down the window. My breath felt too loud. My hands sat stiff on the wheel. Then he stepped out. The officer looked calm, almost casual, which made it worse. He walked like someone who was used to people tensing up when he appeared, and didn't take it personally. "Evening," he said as he approached. His flashlight didn't hit my eyes, which was the first surprise. "Know why I stopped you?" I swallowed. Was I swerving? Nope. I blinked. "Tail light?" "Checked. You're good." He paused, then added, "You look tense, eyes darting everywhere. Not illegal, but it caught my attention." Something in me deflated. "Long day." He nodded like he understood too well. Then he smiled. Not a wide grin, just a hint of warmth that made me even more nervous. "Mind if I ask where you're headed?" "Home," I said, voice steady. "Just left a birthday dinner." "Drinking?" "1 glass. 2 hours ago." He didn't write anything down, just looked at me for a second too long. Then, "You're cute when you panic," he said. The words landed like a misfire. My breath stalled. I looked up sharply, unsure if I misheard. He caught my expression and chuckled. "Sorry, that was probably not regulation." I didn't know what to say. My brain scrambled. My body wanted to flee and freeze at the same time. "I should get going," I said, reaching for my wallet just in case. He didn't budge. "No ticket, just maybe breathe a little deeper next time you drive at night." He gave a nod and stepped back. "Drive safe. And hey, smile. It suits you." Then he was gone, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just dropped a match on a room soaked in gasoline. I sat there for a solid minute, wondering if I'd hallucinated the whole thing. I drove home on autopilot, parked, climbed my 3 flights of stairs, and only realized I still had the warning slip in my hand when I reached the kitchen. It wasn't even a real citation, just a formal, verbal warning on paper. But at the bottom, barely visible in blue ink, was a handwritten note. "If you're still distracted tomorrow night, text me, Jay," with a phone number beneath it. I stared at it for 10 minutes, maybe more, long enough for my tea to go cold and my mind to spiral. What if it wasn't meant for me? What if it was a joke? What if it wasn't a joke? I typed the number into my phone 3 times before I had the nerve to actually send a message. "Hi, just wondering if that note was meant for me, or if I should pretend I never saw it." I hit send before I could stop myself. Regret came instantly. Then the dots appeared. It was. "I don't write many notes like that. You look like someone who needed to be seen." Something tightened in my chest. "Is this where I ask if you want my license or just a coffee date?" I typed back. The reply came fast. "Depends. Are you always this bold with cops?" "Only the ones who flirt mid-traffic stop." The text that followed came slower, like we were both pretending we weren't checking our phones every few seconds. He told me his name was Jacob, that he was 35, worked night patrol mostly, had a dog named Murphy, and drank his coffee black even when he hated the taste. I told him I was 24, worked marketing for a furniture company I didn't care about, had recently moved back to Westbrook after college, and still didn't feel like I fit here. He said, "You look like someone holding your breath. I wanted you to know someone saw you." And that sentence broke something open in me. Not because it was romantic, because it was true. We talked until past 1 a.m., and even then, I kept rereading the messages long after they stopped. The next evening, he texted, "What does your Tuesday night look like?" I stared at the screen. My heart thudded. This wasn't nothing anymore. We met 2 days later at a quiet coffee shop just off Main, the kind of place where the baristas wear beanies year-round and no one asks questions. I got there 10 minutes early because of course I did. I sat near the window, counting the people walking by, pretending I wasn't nervous. When he walked in, he didn't wear the uniform. No badge, no radio, no bulletproof shell between him and the world. Just Jacob. He scanned the place once, then locked eyes with me. Something in his face softened, like I hadn't just been some guy in a car that night, like I was already someone familiar. "You look different," he said as he sat down. "So do you," I replied. Less intimidating, but still sort of... "Copy?" I laughed. "Yeah." We ordered, mostly to fill the silence. He drank his coffee like it was fuel. I sipped mine too slowly, already too wound up. "So," he said, leaning back, "how often do you text guys who pull you over?" "Only when they flirt instead of writing tickets." He smiled at that, but didn't push. Instead, he asked questions. Real ones. Where I grew up, why I came back to Westbrook, what my job was like. Not small talk, not filler, just interest. When I asked about him, he hesitated, only for a second. Then he told me the truth. "I've been a cop since I was 22. Thought it'd be about helping people. Sometimes it is. Most days it's just paperwork and traffic stops." "Like mine," I said, trying to keep it light. "That was different." "How?" He paused, then said quietly, "You didn't look afraid of me, just tired and still trying not to disappear." The words hit harder than I expected. I looked away. Maybe I was. He didn't reply. Didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't empty. It carried something that made my chest ache. "You always this honest?" I asked eventually. "Only when I don't want to waste time." After that, something shifted. Our conversation deepened. He told me about a relationship that ended 2 years ago. Someone who wanted the idea of dating a cop, but not the reality. I told him I hadn't really dated anyone seriously. Not publicly. Not here. "That doesn't surprise me," he said, watching me carefully. "This town has long memories and loud mouths." I nodded. "People like quiet here. Safe. Predictable." "And you don't?" "I do," I admitted, "but not when it feels like hiding." There was a long pause, then he said, "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to." "I know, but it's not that." "Then what?" I hesitated. "It's the fact that you're you." He raised an eyebrow. "I mean, you're visible," I said. "People recognize you. You walk into a diner and half the town knows who you are. Me? I can still fly under the radar." "You like that?" "I like control. I like choosing what people see." He nodded slowly, then leaned in a little. "But what happens when someone sees more?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. We left the cafe after an hour, maybe less. I didn't want to leave, but something in me kept saying, "Don't get used to this. Don't want too much." Outside, the sun was still high, the street busy, people everywhere. He walked me to my car. "This was nice," I said. He smiled. "I'm glad you texted." I glanced around. There were people I recognized. A woman from my building, a guy who worked at the same office complex. My fingers twitched at my side, wanting to reach for his, but I didn't. He noticed. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just someone I know's over there." He looked over his shoulder, then nodded. "Got it." There was no bitterness in his voice, no judgment, just quiet understanding. "I'm not embarrassed," I said quickly. You're protecting yourself," he finished. "I've been there." Then he took a step back. Enough to give me space, but not enough to feel like rejection. "Look," he said, "I don't need this to move fast. I just need it to be real." "It is," I said. He nodded once. "Then let's keep it that way." He walked off without another word. Not cold, not angry. Just steady. I sat in my car for a long time after that, watching the street, wondering if I'd just lost something before it even had a chance to start. I wanted to chase after him. I didn't. Instead, I drove home with my pulse thudding in my neck, asking myself the same question over and over again. Was I willing to be seen, or was I still trying to disappear? We weren't dating, not officially, not publicly, but we were something. Late-night texts, midweek drives, moments that felt more real than anything I let myself feel in years. Still, it was always quiet, always private, his place, my place, or in his cruiser on back roads no one cared about. And I told myself I liked it that way. I lied. It happened on a Sunday. We were heading to a trail Jacob liked. Hidden, peaceful. He was behind the wheel, sunglasses on, one hand resting on the gear shift like it lived there. I was sipping water, trying not to replay the last 30 seconds. We just passed someone I knew, a coworker, someone who didn't talk much but definitely noticed things. I think that was someone from my office, I said too casually. Jacob glanced over. You sure? Not entirely, but maybe. He didn't say anything, but the silence felt heavier than it needed to be. I kept talking. I just don't want people talking, that's all. He pulled off onto the gravel road leading to the trailhead, parked and turned the engine off. Then he looked at me, really looked. No sunglasses, no buffer. Look, he said, calm but direct. I get it. You didn't sign up for this to be a headline at work. I didn't mean... You're not wrong for being careful, he interrupted. But can I ask something? Yeah. Are you being careful, or are you hiding? I froze. He leaned back, letting the words hang. Because there's a difference. I've spent most of my life not giving people a reason to look too closely, I said, and now I'm in a car with the most visible guy in this town. He nodded slowly. I know what that feels like. He turned his gaze forward, out the windshield, and said, a few years back, I was seeing someone. Nothing serious, but someone saw us holding hands. Not even in this town, 2 counties over. I watched his hands tighten on the wheel. Next week, my chief pulled me into his office, asked if I had any lifestyle updates I wanted to share. The words felt sharp, even in a whisper. They didn't punish me, not officially, but they made sure I knew I'd stepped outside the line. He didn't look at me when he added, that guy ghosted me 3 days later, said I was too visible, said he couldn't be with someone people stared at. A silence settled, the kind that doesn't ask for sympathy, only understanding. That sucked, I said quietly. It did, Jacob admitted, but it taught me something. He turned back to me, voice steady. If someone can't be with me unless it's in secret, I don't want to be with them at all. I felt the words like a punch, not because they were cruel, because they were true. You think that's what I'm doing? I asked. I think, he said carefully, you're figuring it out. But I also know what it feels like to be someone's secret, and I won't do it again. It wasn't an ultimatum. It was a boundary, and it cracked something inside me wide open. I'm trying, I said. This is just more real than I expected. You're more real. He nodded. That matters, but I need you to hear me clearly. He reached over and took my hand, not to comfort, but to anchor. If I lose this job over loving someone, maybe it was never mine to keep. The stillness after that sentence was louder than anything I'd heard all day. I couldn't reply, not right away, not without giving myself away. So instead, I just sat there, holding his hand, letting the wind outside rush past like it had somewhere better to be. And I realized something I'd been avoiding for weeks. He wasn't asking me to be fearless. He was asking me to stop disappearing. I didn't plan it. I was just out running errands on my lunch break. Groceries, dry cleaning, mind elsewhere. Then I saw the food truck Jacob always talked about, the one that never matched his shift. Pulled pork sliders, spicy slaw, the works. Without thinking, I bought 2, and fries. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in my car across from the police station, staring at the glass doors like they might shatter if I walked through them. My heart pounded, not because I was afraid of seeing him, but because I might be seen seeing him. No shadows, no darkness to hide in, just daylight, and me. I almost turned the key in the ignition. Then I remembered what he said. If I lose this job over loving someone, maybe it was never mine to keep. So I got out of the car and crossed the street. The front desk officer blinked at me like I didn't belong. I'm here to drop something off. For Officer Jacob? She narrowed her eyes. You family? Just food. She held my gaze a second too long, then buzzed the back. Left glass door. Knock. He's in. The hallway was colder than it should have been. Sterile. Silent. I walked past a bulletin board full of community flyers and a stack of traffic cones. Then I saw him, hunched over a desk, pen moving fast. I knocked. He looked up, and something in his whole body changed, relaxed, lit up. You bringing contraband? He asked, standing up. Only the edible kind. I held out the bag. He stepped into the break room, tugged me in behind him, and we sat. No small talk, just the sound of foil crinkling and fries being devoured. No one's ever brought me lunch in uniform, he said between bites. Seriously? He nodded. People bring problems, not pulled pork. I smiled, tried not to act like my pulse was a drumline. I figured if I can't hold your hand in public yet, I can at least hold your lunch. He paused, then laughed. A real one. It settled something in my chest. I missed you this week, he said, voice low. Me too. The quiet between us felt warm this time. Not afraid, not waiting, just steady. Then the door creaked. A young officer peeked in, early 20s, probably new. Oh, sorry, he said. Jacob stood a little straighter. All good, man. Just eating. The rookie glanced between us, then smiled. Didn't peg you for a pulled pork guy. I contain multitudes, Jacob said without missing a beat. The guy chuckled and disappeared. I stared at the door. Jacob turned to me. You okay? I thought he'd say something. He did. He said I like pulled pork. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Think people will talk? Maybe, he said. But they always talk. Doesn't mean they know anything. I nodded slowly, and for the first time I didn't feel exposed. I felt chosen. We walked out together back into the daylight. No one said anything. No one pointed. But that wasn't the point. I had shown up. For him. For me. Later that night he texted, I didn't expect you today, but I needed it more than I knew. I stared at the screen before typing, I didn't come for the food. He replied with just one line, I know. That's why it mattered. It happened again on a Friday. I just picked up groceries, the same road, the same turn, the same flash of blue and red lights in my rearview mirror. At first I froze, then I smiled. I pulled over, heart already racing, but for a different reason this time. The cruiser behind me stopped. Another pulled in behind it. 2 cars, full daylight, plenty of traffic. He was making a scene. I rolled down the window, leaned out. You serious right now? Jacob walked up, sunglasses on, full uniform, no rush in his steps, the same way he walked the first time, confident, controlled. He stopped at my door, leaned in just enough. License and registration? I raised a brow. Really? He smirked. Thought I should pull you over one more time, just to be sure. Of what? He stepped back, gestured for me to get out. I hesitated, but then I did. The second cruiser's door opened, and a young officer from before gave a thumbs up like this wasn't his first time seeing this plan unfold. I stood in front of Jacob, blinking against the sun. This is public, I said quietly. I know. People are watching. I hope so. And then he kissed me. Not rushed, not hidden, just us. There was a brief honk from a passing car, a cheer from someone down the road. The second officer clapped once, more amused than anything. I pulled back, flushed. You trying to get written up? He shrugged. If I do, it's worth it. I laughed, a real one. The kind I used to save for private rooms. We stood there for another second before he said, I wanted people to see, not because I need to prove anything, but because I don't want to hide anymore. You sure? Are you? I looked around. At the street I'd driven 100 times. At the cars, the open sky, the sidewalk where everything could be seen. And I nodded. That night we didn't go anywhere fancy. Just sat in his living room with takeout and a dog that insisted on being in the middle of everything. At one point, Jacob said, I don't need a parade, just presence. I thought about that for a long time. about how love didn't need to be loud to be true, but sometimes it needed to be visible. Weeks passed. We weren't parading around town, posting photos or holding hands on every street, but we didn't flinch either. I didn't panic when someone from work saw us. I stopped correcting people who assumed I was dating a woman. I just let the silence do the work. One night we drove back to the Overlook, the same hill where he once asked if he could kiss me. This time we didn't stay in the car. We leaned against the hood, sipping lukewarm coffee and splitting a half-crushed bag of almonds from the glove box. "I've been thinking," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous. Seriously." "Okay, what about?" "That night you first pulled me over. I was wrecked. I thought everything was falling apart. But you, I saw you." "Yeah, and for the first time I didn't feel smaller when someone did." He nodded. "I didn't want to fix you. I just didn't want you to disappear." I looked at him. "You didn't, and I don't want to anymore." He took my hand, not in some dramatic way, just enough to anchor us again. "You never asked for my license after that first night," I said. "Didn't need it." "Why not?" He looked at me steady. "You gave me something better." "What?" He squeezed my hand. "Your trust. That was always the point. Not the kiss, not the text, not the hand-holding in places where people talk. The point was, I stayed, in the daylight, with him, seen,